Welcome to the Be That 1% podcast. I'm your host, James Silvis, mindset specialist and performance coach. And here on the show, I'm going to challenge you to think deeper, commit to greatness, and develop a stronger mindset. You'll hear stories from those who are living life on their terms, and you'll receive strategies that will help you level up. So the question is, are you ready to be your own 1%? Let's get started. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Be That 1% podcast. Thank you for your mind, your ears, your energy, for showing up today. I'm going to continue my Q&A series here. Not really a series, but more so something that I want to just bring more to the podcast. And so if you have questions via Instagram, or you want to email those to me, or however you can get the questions to me, send those. And I want to make more episodes around what you and the Be That 1% community want to learn more of, talk more about, hear me and my thoughts on. And that would not only help me better craft my content for you, but also help give you some insight and some answers to maybe some questions that you're feeling challenged with, or just haven't had the level of clarity that you're looking for. So the question I'm going to be answering today is how to have more effective meetings. If you're in any sort of leadership position, whether it's corporate or even in your own business, whatever it may be, you will quickly find that as a leader, people want your time, need your time, and a lot of your time gets spent in meetings back to back. And if you're not careful, your whole day can be nothing but meetings, and it can quickly drain your energy. It can stifle your creativity. It can put you in a place mentally and emotionally where you feel burnt out, or you just don't feel as motivated to do the work because, you know, it's not what you signed up for, or it's not as much of what you want to be doing, and so many things can happen. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about what I see from the clients that I support and serve, and kind of some things that I've worked through with them and what's helped them get through some of these challenges in regards to meetings. And then also some maybe some things that you can implement right away after listening to this. So let's talk about why are there so many meetings? You know, it's a common thing that I'm finding with a lot of my clients is maybe 50, I'd say at least 50% of the meetings that they have are either too long or don't need to happen. Like that, it could be summarized in an email. It could be had in a 5-minute conversation over lunch, or in transit from meeting to office. Like, it can be exchanged completely differently. But oftentimes meetings are scheduled for the need of validation, or to minimize some fear or insecurity that one or both people in that meeting, or group of people in that meeting, have toward themselves, others, or the situation at hand. And if there's not a solid framework, or there's a lack of intentionality behind the setting of these meetings, they can drag out, and everyone loses. Because then the intention behind meetings, or the association to meetings, becomes, oh, this is boring, this is a waste of time, I don't want to be here, which is what people mostly are thinking about in meetings anyway. So if you can create a tripwire, so to speak, before meetings, a framework while in meetings, and then a way to follow up about the meeting in a more streamlined, effective way, not only are you going to have more time in your day, but you're going to be able to still have a pulse on what's happening inside your company or on your team, without all of the active engagement in an unnecessary kind of exchange, aka a meeting. So there is I will drop a little note here on a book that I think might help just streamline email, telecommunications, and even also the way that you speak. And that's called Smart Brevity. That book is really, really helpful from how do I think about what I'm going to say in the other person's perspective to save them time. right? Especially with emails, a lot of the emails that we write are filled with fluff because maybe we don't want to hurt someone's feelings. We want someone to understand our perspective. We want them to feel included. And so a lot of that language creates a very dense email when all the person who is reading the email wants to know is what they need to know. But sometimes we get in our own head and we want a people please, or we want to be viewed a certain way. And so that's where the extraness comes in that doesn't need to be there. And so that book does a really good job of giving you real life examples of what a full length email looks like and then what a smart brevity email looks like. And it's completely different. And once you read it, you're like, oh gosh, I could totally learn more about this, right? So I would definitely suggest that book if you're looking to sharpen anything regarding communications, email, in person, text message, you name it. Okay. If you don't already have this is, I guess, step one is come up with a level. Who has access to you? I think it's a lot of leaders that I work with want people to know that they have quote unquote open door policies. They want people to feel comfortable to come to them with ideas, problems, whatever. And that there's nothing innately bad about that, but there needs to be a series of steps that they need to go through in order to get access to you, right? Not everyone can have access to you. Otherwise, you won't get anything done. So they need to know that, you need to know that, and barriers need to be put in place so that not everyone can email you and just set up a meeting and you show up. Otherwise, you're not in control and you can't lead like that, right? So most of your meetings should be either, depending on where you're at in your organization or on your team, like with direct reports or your direct report, right? Like who you respond to, like who you report to, and then who reports to you. Like those are the main focal points. That may sound obvious, but it's important to note. I find that if you're not meeting with them weekly in some form or fashion, call it an email or a 15-minute whatever check-in, a lot can fall through the cracks. And so what I set up with my clients is at minimum 2 times a month, they're connecting in person. Or if they're both traveling, then obviously Zoom or some sort of video conferencing. 2 times minimum. Ideally, I'd love it for weekly, but you got to feel where your time is and what you have, what you want it to be, and what the demands of the company are, because that's going to dictate how often you should meet. But anything outside of that, if you're waiting too long, like one a month, that I don't personally, there's a lot that can drop in between that. I don't suggest that at all. So 2 times a month, bare minimum. 3 times a month, great. 4 times a month, once a week, ideal. These meetings should have frameworks. What's a framework? It means what's the structure of the meeting? Is it free for all? Is it first we open with this, then we segue to this, then we close with this? Any meeting that has structure is naturally going to be more effective than meetings that don't have structures, unless the whole point of the meeting is not to have structure. Maybe it's a creative brainstorming session, fine. But mostly when it's structured, it allows for better use of time, right? So one structure that I have seen great success with one of my clients is something as simple as, what's the problem we're going to be talking about today? That could be leader 1 brings to leader 2 a problem, or leader 2 brings to leader 1, or it's both established that leader 1 and leader 2 have the same problem and they're both bringing it to talk about it with each other. What's the problem? Why is it a problem? What are the proposed solutions to the problem? Who needs to be involved to help solve this problem? And does that solution align with our values, our mission, our vision, and the direction we want the company to go? Just having something similar to that forces people to think through what they're planning on presenting in the meeting in that frame of mind. So they're going to share the information through that lens. And it already prompts them to think through what they plan to share, as opposed to just showing up to a meeting, not really knowing what it's about, not having had thought about what you were going to say or putting it out into any form of organization and then working through it live, which doesn't allow for extreme depth as opposed to coming in prepared. And then if it doesn't get talked about, that's one thing, but plan on as if it is. Because then all these minds that are sharpened by what they're bringing now can wrestle with what's the best idea, right? So what's the framework? And do people need to send that to you prior? This is one thing that I know one of my leaders has done. In order to meet with me, you need to answer the following questions before we even set time. What's the problem? Why is it a problem? Who needs to be involved? And what have you done so far? Like whatever it is that you want to know, make that a framework. Send it to the people that usually meet with you and say, this is how we're going to be meeting from now on. Feel free to add whatever you'd like to this, but I'd love for you to send this to me prior so that we have this already premeditated in a way and we can just go deep with what's working, what's not working, what needs to be refined in the time that we've committed. So find a framework, right? Number 3, this is a big one, is enter the meeting with a collaborative mindset so that everyone has an opportunity to challenge an idea and through that accept whatever the best idea is. So many times people will come in with an idea, think it's the best thing in the world because they've spent so much time on it. It makes sense to them. It's logical. Anyone who doesn't agree with this idea is stupid. And then they say the idea and it's met with crickets, or people are like, yeah, we're not going to do that. And then that person becomes resentful. They become bitter. They become defensive and they shut down, they withdraw, and then they question why they're on the team, if they feel valued, they feel like they lost. The whole point was for their idea to win out. And so it became more about who's right as opposed to what's right. And so when you enter with a collaborative mindset, you enter with, hey, I have my idea and I believe in it and I'm going to share it. And then we're going to poke holes in it. We're going to attack it. We're going to do what we got to do to make sure that the best idea outside of, in this meeting that we come up with then gets implemented. And this is what Pixar did so well. And this is why almost every movie they make is phenomenal, because they have these brainstorm, or I think it's brain tanks. Brainstorm. I'm blanking on the actual name of it, but they get all these writers in the same room, and the whole point is to tear up, like it's a metaphor, but like quite figuratively, rip up any idea that is terrible. It's like, that story does not work, and here's why. You creating that character is not going to do this, and it needs to be cut. Or I like that, but I don't like that. Like, they're not shy about sharing what they believe is right or wrong. And none of them take it personally because they've all agreed that that's the best way to produce the best work. I'm going to come in with what I feel is the best that I can come up with. And we're going to use that as a building block, not as the whole castle, a building block to build the best idea that supports the team, the organization, the film, whatever it is that's being created or worked towards, right? And so you may come in and explain your idea, and it may not happen. It doesn't mean that you're any less valuable. It doesn't mean that you're dumb. It doesn't mean that you're stupid. It doesn't mean that they don't care about you. It just means that you did what you could, and sometimes the CEO is just going to make their decision, and you being a part of that team are just going to have to work through that and find another level of resourcefulness. Now, there are times where your idea not being accepted is flat out just rejection and they don't like you. And those might be times where you really do some thinking and being like, is this really the environment where I feel I can contribute? And that might be something that you ask yourself. But I find in most cases, because of the attitudes that people walk into meetings with, they're actually creating negative experiences for themselves, all based on how they're thinking about the meeting and the people in it. And it isn't until that shifts that a new level of interaction can happen and a new level of effectiveness can be met in those meetings, right? So, collaborative mindset won't always mean that your idea wins, but you're giving yourself and the environment the best chance to survive and to thrive. So, number 2 is, finding a framework that works for the meeting and even implementing it pre-meeting. And third is most meetings don't need to happen, so maybe condense that into some form of updating, right? And that can go into the framework that we just talked about. And I would challenge you to shorten meetings by 20%. If you naturally and always set meetings for 45 minutes, set it for 30. See what happens. Sometimes you leverage the Parkinson's law here, which states that time shrinks or expands depending on how much time you allot to an activity. So if I say you have 4 hours to complete task A, and I say that to the same person, but I give them 8 hours to do it, both parties are going to take the amount of time that it takes that I've given them. This is what Parkinson's law states. So if I say, hey, we have 30 minutes, let's make the most of it, people are going to come in with another level of intentionality than if I say, yeah, we got about 45 minutes to an hour. It's more loose, it's more relaxed, and people come in with like I'm not sure what to do here, or they talk longer than they need to. And, I'm all for connecting and finding out things about people and making sure that there's a humanistic side to meetings 100%. I'm the first person to sign up for that. And also finding that balance of where's the productivity and effectiveness. If our role as leaders and our organizations are to provide a solution, a service to someone, and to do that to the best of our ability, our meetings need to reflect that. So it can't be 45 minutes talking about nothing that supports us. It has to be centered around what's going to make us better and stand out to the people that we've committed to serve. So hopefully these mindset shifts and little, simple things that we can do immediately help you become more effective in your meetings at work, on your team, and leverage your time better. Time is finite, 24 hours, right? And it can shrink or expand depending on our emotionality and our mindset towards it. But 24 hours nonetheless. What are you doing with it? And do people value your time because you're making them think through what they want to talk about before they get around you? Key, very important. We train people how to communicate with us each and every day based on what we say, what we ask, what we tolerate, right? And as a leader, we need to set the tone. We need to hold the line. We need to create the standard. And we do that through a lot of what we talked about here. So thank you for your question. I appreciate you. Thank you again for being in the 1% community. And if you have any other questions, please email me. And if you got value from this episode, please send it to someone that you know could also get value, some leader in a company or your friend who's running a team or whoever you feel will benefit. Please send this to them. Help me get the word out. If you haven't done so already, please head over to iTunes, leave me a 5-star review. Would greatly appreciate that. And as always, go out there, be your own 1%. Live life on your terms. Much love.